What kind of advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness, starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
Welcome to the Recovery Report Live, Global Pro's deep dive into relevant business and insurance topics, providing actionable takeaways and valuable insights. We aim to update, educate, and inform you weekly. I'm Dan Odess, president of Global Pro, where we manage risk to recovery. For more than a decade, we have represented thousands of businesses and community associations in the placement of insurance and the recovery from over $1 billion in damage. We are your source for insurance news you can use. There are many challenges facing businesses. Prior to the pandemic, point of sale largely shifted online, and many called for the death of retail. In comes COVID, and we are seeing more and more businesses declare bankruptcy, such as Brooks Brothers, 200-year-old business. But in reading about a business like Brooks Brothers, it was already seeing its struggles due to its inability to adapt. The days of suits and ties were slowly becoming less mainstream. People were trading in their long-sleeve button-up shirts and ties for lightweight shirts and joggers. It was becoming acceptable to dress down in your latest Lululemon. Now, the American workforce is at home, and from the waist down, some can't even find the time to put on pants. But what does this all mean? Things are changing, and staying relevant isn't just about being first. It's about being able to adapt. The insurance industry isn't any different. In walks Lemonade, massive IPO. But why? Because it makes information and data immediately accessible to consumers, amongst other reasons. It's simple and easy to use. But will it work? Like many tech businesses, we don't know. But it is a sign that times are changing for the insurance industry, much like Lululemon was to the Brooks Brothers. The way we buy insurance isn't the only thing changing. The product itself is changing just as fast and as often. For many business owners that filed pandemic claims, they quickly saw insurance companies add addendums to their renewals that actually excluded COVID-19. So is this to say my prior policy didn't exclude that coverage? Did it include coverage for pandemic? For condominium properties located in coastal areas, they saw something similar. Insurance companies denied and limited payments for hurricane-related losses because of an endorsement for wind-driven rain. But your broker didn't tell you about this. Similarly, South Florida businesses, community associations that disputed the amount of a payment from Hurricane Irma received demands from their insurance companies demanding arbitration in New York, despite the fact that neither the insurance company, claim, nor the property are located in New York. Times are changing and consumers need to stay vigilant. The days of relying on your broker to get, quote, what you need are a thing of the past. Buying something solely on price will only come back to bite you as a business owner, board member, and property manager. On the topic of changing times and things impacting our businesses and community, I want to bring on our special guest today that knows all about promoting and managing your brand in the wake of this pandemic. Founder of Alchemy, a brand enhancement, PR, events, and marketing company. Clients include Global Pro, UD, 11, Men in Hospitality, and Lafette Rosé. Whether it's PR campaigns or some of the biggest, most high-profile events, Alchemy is at the center of the action. Rather than pigeonholing itself into PR or just events, they examine your brand DNA to align with your goals. Matt Brooks, welcome to the Recovery Report Live.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Big fan of Global Pro and your weekly webinar, and a big fan of you. So let's get this started and have some fun.
Matt, I want to get into some questions today with a focus on recovery and resilience for businesses. These are certainly challenging times for many in the hospitality and event business. As I discussed above in the intro to this, businesses have had to completely change how they operate and promote brands. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about how Alchemy is helping its clients and how you're staying in front of your clients?
So I think that's a great question, but I think the first thing is whenever you go through something like we're going through now, whether, a traumatic event or, we've never seen anything like we're going through now, but you really have to start internally, right? Because alchemy has always been defined by transforming the ordinary into extraordinary, but we're not dealing with ordinary times. So with a change in our business, having clients change out, some shutter their doors, some go on break, we really had to take a look internally. And truthfully, I couldn't do what we do without our team. And I thank them so much, because truthfully, a lot of our credit to our success right now is due to the team we have, from Julie, Marnie, Garrett, Ian. And then a lot of the keys for how we work with our clients. Oh, sorry, forgot you, Sarah, Cam, and the rest of the team. But the key is how you deal with your clients. And you have to have good communication internally, because you consistently need to communicate, right? So it can't be the way it was a month ago or 6 months ago. You know, I gave a perfect example we talked about today is our clients are doing something that they've never done before. You know, yesterday we worked with a great restaurant, which we've done many events at, Biblos, and Seiko is setting up the outside patio with his team, and he's supposed to be running the entire operation, and then he has to deal with rain. So you're consistently talking to your clients. You're figuring out how to adapt to the times. You know, some of these restaurants that were strictly dine-in restaurants, they become a lot more focused on delivery. They become a lot more focused on takeout. So how do you get the message across that they're doing that? So I think the biggest key for how we help our client is to communicate, understand what's going on, talk as a team internally, brainstorm with them, and then craft the plan that makes sense for now. Because you can't rest on what worked 6 months ago, because if you do not adapt, you will pretty much die, for lack of better words. And a good example, even the stuff that we plan, you know, we throw some, you know, great events together throughout the year. And, you know, now we're saying, how do we take it digitally, right? So Global Pro is going to be doing X event. They're going to be doing it digitally, where we would normally be doing an event, you know, that's a champagne tasting or a whiskey tasting at one of the top restaurants, whether it's in New York or Miami. I think additionally with adapting the time, we worked with an unbelievable rosé brand, Lafette Rosé. They lost about 90% of their distribution points for sale between mid-March.
Big numbers.
And how do we pivot? And luckily, we all came together internally, and we have an unbelievable PR campaign that's led by the PR side of the business. Julie's done a fantastic job leading that. But then we had Garrett and Ian work on the business on the other side with the founder and CEO, Danae, and we went direct to consumer. And we're like, how can we personally reach our audience? And we were able to do that. And our numbers on DTC have helped, basically, the numbers on DTC for Lafette Rosé have helped the business not only stay in business, but we've actually worked with them to grow their following. So we're going to markets that Lafette wasn't in before. People can order it all over the country. And truthfully, the awareness for the brand, not only from a PR side, but from a social media side, they started COVID with 4,500 followers, and they have over 20,000 followers now. So I think the big thing is you can't rest on your laurels. You can't say, I'm going to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable getting uncomfortable. And I think the last thing is, you know, take Udonis Haslam. You know, he used this time period to be the voice of Miami, and we helped his voice get heard. And now what we're doing is, how can we continue to have him be a beacon of light for the community and plan out the entire year while also focusing on what he's doing now? And without those strategies, or without being willing to adapt, and without the biggest thing, communication, understanding goals of what your clients want, you're not going to be able to help your clients, but also get them through this process.
And you talked a little bit about your process, and obviously we're very familiar with it. Global Pro has seen great benefits of working with Alchemy and going through an entire brand change and making sure that everything down to the colors, to the way that our messages, that aligns with those goals. But you also talk about something that I think is unique. You talk about brand DNA. Let's explore that a little bit more. What does that mean to Alchemy, and how do you actually examine a brand DNA?
So when we jump in with a brand to work with you, right? And let's take, you know, just whatever brand it is, they make widgets. We want to tell a complete story about the brand. And you can't focus just on one thing, because you will not be able to tell a brand story. Your message will get tired. We focus on utilizing each component of the company's brand DNA to highlight everything that makes the company newsworthy and promotable. And with that said, I think one of the things that's key here is, you know, living in this new world that we are with COVID, is your brand still has what it stands up for, right? What makes it special? What makes it important? And now you have to take those, values that your company's built on and move them into today's world. And I think whenever you put a plan together, there's all the things that make a company press-worthy, and our team does a great job on it. Julie, Marnie, Cam, Sarah on the press side are consistently coming up with 5 or 6 different pitches at a time that if they were just telling a story about one thing, it wouldn't work. They have to tell multiple stories to keep press interested. And even when you're doing an event, for example, we do some of the best events in Miami during our Basel, and we work with some of these big brands. We have to understand what these brands want, so the consumer that's there can see what this brand is about. It's not just slapping a logo on something. It's very much about understanding what your brand values are, working with each component of it, and finding a way to tell the complete story.
And dissecting that DNA, especially with today's challenges, has to be so important, especially making sure that you get your messaging across, with the sensitivities in the press and the issues that we're seeing arise and recently with the politics and the pandemic and disasters and how we're accessing that media and information. What do you see some of the biggest challenges for the hospitality industry, especially in South Florida, that they're facing in the wake of all of this in right here and now?
So I personally think some of the biggest challenges that the hospitality industry is facing, and let's just use South Florida as a whole, are government guidelines. Just this week, the mayor announced one thing, then he did another. Not knowing, when a curfew is coming in. Being able to withstand what's going on and keep your business open, because that's a real challenge people have now. PPP money was great. These businesses are working to keep people employed, but if you can't fill your restaurant, and all of a sudden you're doing 50% of the numbers you would be, it's very difficult. And then I think one of the biggest challenges that South Florida has as a whole is working together to fix the problem. And I will actually say I was not just proud of some of my clients that were involved, but the community banding together this week, because when they went to shut down certain restaurants and shut down certain gyms, a lot of these people came together that are key figures in the community and said, wait, you can't do this. Like, you can't just shut us down. We're not going to be able to withstand this. So we need to work together to fix the problem. And I think there's 2 sides to that in the hospitality industry. It's the people who are the owners and the operators, and then it's just your everyday people living in the community. Don't be stupid, because if you're doing things that can endanger other people, or you're not being safe, or more people are getting sick, this problem will not go away. So that leads to the next part of this, which is for the hospitality industry, there is no business right now or event travel coming in. And we can be honest, but those hotels on Collins Ave, feed a lot of the businesses in the Miami Beach community. So now everybody who normally would be coming in, we've lost those people. So we really have to be smart. We have to work together to fix the problem. And those are really the biggest challenges, being able to withstand government guidelines, following procedure. And it's also understanding the government guidelines, because I was at a swing by a friend's liquor store the other day to pick up something. And it was at 8:05, code came by and said, you need to be closed. And her response was, well, that was for 4th of July weekend. They're like, no, we're keeping it going forward. She normally sells a lot of alcohol between 8 and 10 p.m. That's how people lose business. I was at Prime 112 one night for dinner. I sat with Miles, and it was while protests were going on. He lost 300 covers probably. I'm assuming, I don't know the number, but he lost his whole wave of reservations between 9:45 and 12, and he's already at 50% loss. And that doesn't just affect the owner of the business. That affects the waiter. So that waiter who's now coming back to work, he probably lost $100, $150 that night in tips. But if you do that for 2-3 nights over a weekend, you're talking $300 to almost $500. That's a lot of money for all these people. And they really are the backbone of the community, the people who serve us every day. And it's not just the people you see in the front, it's the dishwashers in the back, it's the line cooks, it's everybody that goes in. So if we're not smart, it affects everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. From the top to the bottom. I mean, I think people, are so focused on the business owners. You're seeing a lot of spotlight put on them. And then they talk about laying off of their staff, but they're not talking about each of those. That maybe, that may be the second or third job for some of these people that, they just absolutely rely on just to have some money. And now they have nothing, or they lost one of the two jobs that they need to hold, especially in the hospitality industry, being the largest employer in the U.S. So, as far as an industry goes, you talked about events. South Florida has become famous, obviously, for its events like Art Basel and Ultra and a few of these other outdoor, indoor, huge conventions. Brand new convention center right there at Miami Beach. Talk to us a little about what are the what are the challenges? What are the future of these events, especially for nightlife? I know that you guys you represent 11. Over the next 6 months and beyond, where do you see these businesses as far from a brand management and a PR? How are they going to manage their companies and the outward messaging, and how are they going to benefit from the situation?
Well, we're very fortunate to represent two of the best venues in Miami when it comes to strict nightclubs, like specific nightclubs, which 11 and Rockwell. And we also are fortunate enough to represent Bodega, which, works as a lounge and an eatery. So going back to your question in terms of how will they adapt, I think it's a bigger question is for events and for nightlife is adapting, right? You can't think like yesterday, right? So even if you take to start just in the general event process, we do probably 10 to 12 events a year, right? So if I'm throwing an event and it was a small dinner and you used to say, 20 people, but if it grows to be 30, it's okay. Well, now it's not just about the budget, it's about the people in the room being comfortable.
Yep.
Well, large events are not going to happen in person for a while. So with that said, and then you turn to nightlife, I actually truly believe that people want nightlife back because they want something to do, but it's how do you do it safely? So I think the biggest thing is to continue to adapt. And I will actually say one of our clients has done an unbelievable job. We work with a group called Medium Rare. And this is where I think a lot of the general event stuff is going is digital. They recently, during Super Bowl every year, they do a party called Shaq's Funhouse, and they also do a party called Gronk Beach this year they introduced. They did an event digitally, right? And they had 8 million people tune into this event. So all of a sudden you're taking,
Crazy.
You have this following. How do you use your following to stay relevant? What is the pivot for your company and how do you adapt? Now, when you come to nightlife, what I will say is I truly believe that people still want to have a good time and people need to live their life. They just need to think, how can I do this safely? So I think when nightlife does come back and it does have its resurgence, it'll be gradual, but people will come back. I have no doubt in my mind that 11 will go back to being the highest grossing nightclub per square foot in the world, okay? And I think Rockwell will go back to be successful and be one of the top nightclubs in North America. And I personally believe it's going to be a slow, gradual build for them. And they're just going to have to figure out, hey, when should I open? Because one of the biggest things we talked about earlier are these government guidelines, right? So, if you take a month ago, they were looking at potentially opening in July or August. Will that happen now? Who knows, right? So I think the big thing is people adapting for events, for nightlife, understanding what it looks like, understanding the precautions that will go into it. I wouldn't be, while those bottle servers don't wear much a lot of the time, I could imagine right now they will be wearing hand sanitizer that's attached to something, pouring it in their hands. They will have masks on. They will be doing everything to be safe. They may, sell more tables and cut back on GA. There will be a time that it will come back. And truthfully, we talk about it in our office all the time. I think when you go through different ages as well, people of a certain age are, 25 and younger are probably less scared to go out than people 35 and older. So your demographic may change, and how do you appeal to them? We argue about it in our office sometimes, and our office ranges from people who are interning from the summer with us that are 21 to people who are 36, 37, and everybody's got a different view on what would make them comfortable. So I think the biggest thing is, how do you adapt? How do you set guidelines? And how do you build for the now while also thinking about the future?
So let's move beyond COVID, the pandemic, and how that's, changing the businesses. You touched on the digital campaigns, the marketing efforts that you've seen there, where 8 million people tuning into something. I mean, something that we've never seen before. And I know one of your brands that you've represented, Lafette, was involved in an event just like that, where a DJ, showed the product, drinking it. What do you think are some of those challenges, and for some of the brands that are kind of like stuck in their old ways, and how are they going to evolve? What's their strategy for getting in on this opportunity and capitalizing on this? I mean, you can hit so many more people so quickly. There's got to be an advantage there, but how can they get into that?
I think this goes back to what we talked about earlier. It goes back into figuring out what your brand DNA is, because whatever you do, it needs to stick to your values. Figuring out a campaign that makes sense from the press side, and then figuring out a campaign that makes sense from the social side, right? I think one of the things that our team did well is, we have multiple people who work on the FET, right? Julie is an expert in pitching beverage media and lifestyle media. And when we took this approach with Lafette, it's like, okay, we need to tell our brand story. We need to show how people can buy us, and we need to show that we're available, right? On the flip side, we had to build from scratch while doing a press campaign. We had to build a whole DTC ad campaign. So we basically said, okay, we're going to utilize influencers. We're going to utilize them organically. We're going to utilize one or two that will be more partner influencers for us that we do large partnerships with, and then seeding, right? The more people that see your product, the better. As long as you're not stupidly wasting money, it's great, right? But I think in terms of Lafette, we were able to pivot and consistently tell the story. So we moved into a time where it was talking about, okay, here's your best rosés for summer. Then here's how you can purchase, here's CEO stories. So we're getting back into that brand DNA. And then it's also, Lafette happens to be owned by it happens to be a Black-owned brand. And that became a talking point. So we had all these things in the brand DNA to talk about. And we tried to showcase that, what our motto was. And it was Lafette Rosé it's the rosé party. And it's a party that's everybody's invited to, as long as you spread love, not hate. So when I got you, buddy. Cheers.
Product placement.
When you take that into account, we were able to put a whole campaign together around it. You brought up the DJ D Nice did. We had sent him some bottles before anybody else did, because we knew that he was doing this Club Quarantine show on Instagram, and we were the first one that he put up. And truthfully, it made a huge impact for us. It actually really helped Lafette kick off its campaign online to sell digitally. That part, people started inquiring, oh my God, what rosé is he drinking? What rosé is he drinking? What rosé is he drinking? And then all of a sudden you saw a lot of other brands. So when Dane was able to get that in his hands as the founder and CEO, and he was able to support that, we were able to use that to start messaging. And then continuing to look for different avenues, press changes. You had Carmelo Anthony, who was doing this show called What's in Your Glass, and him and Dane went for an untraditional press piece. And then, continuing to build and not rest on what happened. Like yesterday, Julie on our team had secured a piece on CNN.com, and that piece helped generate not just awareness, but unbelievable sales. So I think, as you said, it's important to get product in hands of people that align with your brand. You don't want to just give it to anybody. So me going to give my product to a 90-year-old woman who doesn't drink is not who it wants to go to. You need to be targeted. You need to focus on your brand DNA, and you need to figure out what your end goals are. And that's realistically what will help you through that process.
All great information, Matt. I know it's extremely helpful for businesses, especially that are trying to evolve, trying to adapt, trying to pivot in these difficult times. But there are solutions out there, and Alchemy does offer those. And it's fantastic to hear what you're doing for a brand like Lafette. enjoy it. If you don't know what it is, go check it out online. Highly recommended. But also with the nightclubs and the events that you guys are so involved in, and your team is fantastic. I've experienced it myself, and I'd recommend anyone to reach out. I know that Matt has an open door policy. I mean, got his entire office, doesn't have walls, so he pretty much can walk up to anyone at any time, talk to them, get information. He certainly encourage everyone to reach out. But how can our guests get in contact with Alchemy, Matt?
You can reach out to me at matt@alchemy-agency.com, or reach out to us via direct message via our Instagram. We're always available. Or they can, reach out to you, and you could just put them right in touch with us. All those things work, and we're here not only to help your brand go, but to help you during these difficult times.
You heard it right here, folks. Just slide into his DMs. He'll hit you back. Be out with all your business needs. A huge thanks to Matt and all of our attendees. We appreciate your time. For all those that tuned in this week, go online and check us out at getglobalpro.com for all your resources. You can view, read, download any information you need as a business owner or community association to help you in dealing with these disasters. Plan for the next one, because it's only a matter of time. It's not really a if, it's a when. And so check us out on YouTube. You can watch this episode, our prior episodes, all information that you can put to use. We love to connect with our clients. We always are. We're constantly reaching out to them directly. They're constantly calling us directly, 855-487-7475. Shoot us an email, support@getglobalpro.com. And again, thank you, Matt, and all of our attendees for tuning in this week to the Recovery Report Live.